There was a scream, not his own, and then silence. The kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but from something watching you breathe. Elijah Cross opened his eyes to find cold metal beneath him. His cheeks stuck to it, some mixture of sweat and blood. The room was dim, lit only by a slow pulse of blue from the ceiling. Recycled air hissed faintly through vents he couldn't see. There was no wind, no gravity shift, no comfort, just the feeling of being somewhere wrong. Every bone in his body ached, muscles refused to obey. He tried sitting up, groaned, stopped. The back of his skull throbbed with that dull, nauseating pain only head trauma could cause. Then he heard it, breathing. Not his own. It was wet, ragged, wrong. He froze. It wasn't just breathing. It was waiting. He blinked, vision doubling for a second before sharpening just enough to see the wall across from him. No, not a wall. A partition, transparent but scarred, like glass that had been clawed once, twice, 1,000 times, and behind it, something crouched. At first he thought it was a shadow. Then it moved, slowly, deliberately, a shift in weight, like a lion waking up in its cage. It didn't make a sound, didn't growl, didn't blink. Its body was long and low, all sinew and coiled tension, covered in dark plates like obsidian armor melted to flesh. There were no eyes he could clearly see, but he felt it looking at him. The only thing between them was the glass. He pulled himself upright, pressing a hand to his ribs. Nothing broken, maybe, but the stiffness ran deep. Whatever had taken him hadn't cared about comfort. He was in a cell, and something had put that in the one next to his. No door, no instructions, just him and it. A glass wall, lights above, no food, no water. A test. He wasn't a soldier. He'd never touched a gun. He wasn't trained for this. He ran a coffee shop in Yosemite. He wore name tags, gave trail maps to tourists. His biggest problem yesterday had been a broken espresso machine. Now his biggest problem had two sets of lungs and was staring straight through him. He stood, barely, every nerve firing in protest. The thing mirrored his movement. Not fast, not slow, just tracking. And then something changed. A low, mechanical hiss echoed through the room. The wall between them retracted 3 inches. Elijah's heart slammed into his throat. 3 inches. Enough to let scent pass. Enough to let sound move differently. Enough to say, soon. He backed up step by step until his spine hit the far wall. No vents, no escape hatch. The corners were curved, seamless. This wasn't a cage meant to hold a person. It was meant to hold a scenario, a controlled variable. He was the variable. He looked up, saw nothing, but he could feel them, whoever they were, watching, studying. Far above, behind layers of shielding and distance, in a room of blinking lights and alien air, a voice clicked softly, unemotional, precise. The experiment had begun. Elijah couldn't hear them, but somehow, he knew. They thought he'd panic, that he'd scream, maybe beg, maybe freeze, because that's what prey did. The thing across the shrinking divide was a predator. That much was obvious. It wasn't confused about his place in this. It had killed before, probably more than once in cages just like this, and it didn't care if Elijah screamed. He stared back, didn't move, didn't breathe loud. And the thing tilted its head, just slightly. Curious. Elijah didn't know why, but something in him settled, like gravity locking in. This was a test? Fine. They thought humans broke easily. They didn't know what pressure really made in people like him. Elijah Cross had seen death before, not in combat, but in hospital rooms, in long, cruel battles with disease. He'd held the hand of someone he loved as they drifted away while machines beeped in slow mourning. He'd felt helplessness before. This wasn't that. This was different. This was something he could fight, even if it killed him. The partition hissed again. Another inch, two now. The air between them stirred, and Elijah felt it. The difference, the scent of it, metallic, primal, like blood soaked into hot stone. The thing across the glass inhaled, deep, slow, savoring. And then it moved, 1 foot forward, not pouncing, not charging, just approaching. The kind of approach that didn't waste energy on fear or haste. Because when you were born a predator, you never had to rush. Elijah's heartbeat slammed into his throat. His palms slicked, but he didn't move, didn't run, didn't give it the satisfaction of prey. Let it watch him too. Let it wonder why the human wasn't screaming. Above them, unseen behind black glass, alien observers watched in silence. The Avari did not speak unless necessary. They recorded, measured, studied. For all their technological mastery, they didn't understand one thing: what humans became when pushed too far. And Elijah Cross was past far. He searched the room for anything: a screw, a panel, a loose bolt. Nothing, not even a seam in the wall. The cell was perfect, too perfect. And yet, he spotted it. There, just behind him, low to the floor. A drainage slit, barely an inch wide. Meant for cleanup, probably. Sterilization, but metal. He dropped to one knee, never taking his eyes off the thing that still stood waiting. The gap between them was wider now. Not in distance, but understanding. He wasn't just a variable anymore. He was uncooperative. The thing tilted its head again. Then, took another step. Closer now. Close enough to smell sweat. Hear heartbeats. Close enough for a leap. Elijah jammed his fingers into the slit. It hurt. He didn't care. He pried. Bent metal. A little, again. Harder. The thing blinked. Once. Slowly. And then it crouched. That was the signal. The glass wall retracted fully with a whisper. No alarm. No fanfare. Just a clean, silent permission for death to begin. Elijah didn't move. Not yet. The thing stepped into his cell. 7 feet tall, upright now. Shoulders like living stone. Arms that ended in claws too long to be ornamental. Every inch of it designed to end life quickly, efficiently, except it didn't pounce. It studied. Why wasn't the human afraid? Why didn't he cower? Elijah gritted his teeth and ripped hard. The metal came loose in a jagged, rusted curl. It wasn't much, but it was something. The thing shifted again. It was circling now. No direct approach, not yet. Testing him. It had done this before. It had won before, but something in its movement faltered. Not fear, confusion. Because Elijah stood his ground. Weapon, primitive, posture, defiant. And behind his eyes, something different. Not rage, not fear. Resolve. The predator moved, fast, too fast. Elijah barely raised the strip in time. The claws came down. He sidestepped, instinct more than skill. Pain flared as one talon grazed his shoulder. He slammed the metal into his side. It didn't even bleed, but it stepped back. It reevaluated, and above them the aliens paused, zoomed in. Why had the creature missed? It never missed. Elijah turned slowly, bleeding now, breathing hard. The thing flexed its claws, blinked its inhuman eyes, snarled, no sound, but its body screamed the intention. But it hadn't expected resistance. Elijah's mind burned. He didn't need to win. He just needed to disrupt the data. The Avari didn't understand emotion. They didn't understand rebellion. Everything was cause and effect, input and result. So give them chaos. He charged. Not smart, not logical. Just human. The thing reared back, caught off guard. Elijah slammed the makeshift blade into its shoulder. Metal screeched on armor. It roared, louder than thunder. Elijah was thrown back hard, ribs cracked, lights dimmed, but he was smiling because it bled. Dark, thick, not red, but it bled. The predator looked down, touched the wound, stared at him, and for the first time it hesitated. Blood. Thick, black, alien blood smeared across the predator's armored hide. It wasn't supposed to bleed, not from a human, not from a weapon so crude it could have come from a caveman. Yet there it was, glistening, undeniable. Elijah stood, body screaming from the impact, ribs broken, vision blurred, metal shard barely still in hand. And still, he laughed. A cracked, raspy thing, half madness, half defiance. It echoed in the sterile chamber like a taunt. The predator didn't charge this time. It circled, slower, less sure, not just confused now, wary. Elijah dragged himself upright. "You bleed," he whispered through bloody teeth. Then louder, "You bleed." Above, in the hidden chamber where the Ivari observed. Silence. A predator's blood was never drawn before. No human had survived more than 30 seconds of contact. This one had lasted minutes. Fought back, injured the specimen. The data was broken. It didn't compute. The senior analyst's fractal tendrils twitched in irritation. Recalibrations were necessary. But worse, they were witnessing something they long believed impossible. Human unpredictability. Human spirit. The predator lunged again, but this time it didn't strike directly. It feinted, sidestepped. Elijah didn't take the bait. He watched. He waited. And then, in the predator's eyes, he saw it. Recognition. Not of his face, but of something deeper. Pattern disruption. This human wasn't reacting like the others. He was treating it as an equal, as a rival, as a challenge, and it didn't know how to respond. Elijah breathed, pain stabbed with every inhale. The room tilted, but he kept his grip on the blade, on his mind. He spoke again, low and calm. "You're not in control anymore." No one had ever talked to it. He saw something flicker, not comprehension, but caution. He pressed further. "I know what you are, just another animal. Big teeth, sharp claws, but you bleed. You can lose." He stepped forward. The predator didn't move. Not fear, not yet, but uncertainty. Behind the walls, data streams flickered in frustration. The Ivari didn't like this. The human was breaking the narrative, breaking the test because he wasn't playing along. And then Elijah made the most terrifying move of all. He dropped the weapon, let it clang to the floor between them. Hands empty, chin lifted. "Come on then," he growled. "Let's end this." The predator stared. Muscles twitched. Breath heaved. But it didn't strike. Because for all its power, it sensed something ancient behind those human eyes. A thing older than fear. Conviction. In that moment, Elijah wasn't prey. He was something else. And in predator instinct, passed down over 1,000 worlds, something whispered, "Do not attack this one." Elijah stepped closer. Now it stepped back. A single pace. But enough. Enough to let the Ivari finally understand. Their weapon, their champion, their unstoppable killer, was afraid. Not of death, but of meaning. Of a being that chose to defy the script. A being that refused to die quietly. Sirens blared. The ceiling lights shifted from sterile white to red. Behind the predator, a side wall hissed and split open. Retreat protocol. The creature turned, then looked back. Just once. At Elijah. At the human who should have been dead. And left. Just like that. Gone. Elijah slumped, collapsing against the wall, chest heaving. He'd done it, not by winning, but by refusing to lose, by being the one thing they didn't expect, human. The cell was quiet now, too quiet. Just the distant thrum of emergency protocols and Elijah's ragged breathing. He sat in his own blood, shoulder shaking, vision dim, but he was smiling. Somewhere behind those sterile walls, the Ivari were scrambling. The test had failed. No, the illusion had failed. They hadn't broken the human. They'd exposed themselves. Elijah didn't know what data was being broadcast from this station. Didn't know which species in the galactic fold watched these so-called experiments. But he knew this. They would see. They would all see. That humanity could not be conditioned, could not be predicted. And when the predator left him standing, that wasn't mercy. That was a message written in blood and silence. Somewhere far above, in a command dome filled with whispering light and alien dread, the Ivari overseer hovered over the analysis node. Tendrils hovered, trembling, above data streams that flickered with error codes and failed predictions. Subject, refused submission, one of the junior analysts stated, voice barely above silence. Specimen 93H was non-compliant, another added. Engaged predator beyond expected parameters, caused injury, provoked retreat. The overseer pulsed once, a ripple of bioluminescence betraying its unease. This human, it whispered, was unarmed, wounded, alone. Correct. And it broke the algorithm. No answer. The overseer turned its gaze toward the viewer screen, where Elijah still sat, breathing, live. It is not the strength, the overseer murmured. It is the refusal. Later, they sedated him, tried to erase memories, tried to fold him back into the experiment, but something was broken. Not in Elijah, in them. Because now they feared what else might be out there. How many more like him? How many humans might stand when they're told to kneel? Elijah was dumped back on Earth 2 weeks later, barely conscious. No explanation, no apology, just silence. As if the Ivari were hoping Earth wouldn't notice. But Earth did. When Elijah collapsed on a street in Johannesburg, covered in scars no doctor could trace, murmuring words in alien tongues and describing things no telescope had yet seen. Earth took notice, governments listened, scientists wept, and the people believed, because somewhere in Elijah's blood was proof. Somewhere in his eyes was a terror no man could fake, and in his story, a warning. Months passed, quietly, uneasily. The stars felt closer now, not with wonder, with dread. Then the signals came, encrypted, weak, but real. From colonies lost a decade ago. From deep space relays thought destroyed. All bearing the same message. They are watching, they are afraid, and they will not return alone. But something had changed, because they weren't the only ones watching anymore. We were too. Satellites launched, fleets commissioned, not for conquest, for readiness. Because Elijah wasn't the last. He was the first human tested, tortured, measured, and instead of breaking, he made them retreat. His name was spoken like a secret prayer. In the military, a legend. Among civilians, a myth. But in the hidden halls of government, a code word. Cross protocol. Should a hostile force re-engage with Earth, no ambassador would be sent. No treaty offered. The response would be simple. Send one. A decade later, when the Ivari returned in full force, when their world ships blacked out our skies and their message demanded surrender, we didn't argue, we didn't plead, we didn't panic. We just opened the doors to their landing zone and let her walk out. Another human, alone, unarmed, smiling. And as the watching galaxy held its breath, one of the Ivari commanders whispered to another, "They've sent one again." The other shivered and replied with the last words ever transmitted from that landing site, "God help us, they've learned."